The great hall of the Galactic Concord stretched for miles. 12 elder species sat in their floating chairs, looking down at the empty platform below. For 200 years, this hall had decided the fate of countless worlds. Today, it would decide the fate of humanity. High Arbiter Vaulat raised his ancient hand. The hall fell silent. His species had lived for 10,000 years among the stars. To him, humans were nothing more than insects that had learned to build ships. "We have gathered to discuss the human problem," Vaulat said. His voice echoed through the massive chamber. "Their population grows too fast. Their technology advances too quickly. They are dangerous." The other species nodded. They had all agreed on this long ago. Humans were confined to a small cluster of 12 systems. They were not allowed to expand. They were not allowed to join the Concord as equals. They were to be controlled like animals in a cage. Warlord Dren, the military commander of the Concord, stood up. His body was covered in thick armor plates that his species grew naturally. "I propose we begin the final solution. We have waited long enough. Let us reduce their numbers before they become a true threat." "And how do you suggest we do this?" asked another delegate. Dren smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "We release engineered plagues on their outer colonies. We destroy their shipyards with orbital strikes. We blame it on natural disasters and accidents. By the time they understand what is happening, half of them will already be dead." The hall murmured in approval. This plan had been discussed in secret for years. They called it the Calling. Today, they would make it official. Ambassador Keth sat in the back of the hall. He was young by galactic standards, barely 300 years old. His species was small and had little power in the Concord. But Keth had a sharp mind, and something was bothering him. He pulled up his datapad and searched for recent communications from Earth's embassy. There were none. He searched further back. Nothing for 3 years. No complaints about the containment. No requests for trade. No protests about unfair treatment. Just silence. Keth felt cold. In his experience, silence from humans was never a good sign. The vote began. One by one, the elder species raised their approval. The Calling would begin within 1 standard year. Billions of humans would die, and the galaxy would be safe from their dangerous potential. As the final vote was cast, Keth noticed something else. The human ambassador's chair had been empty for 3 years. No replacement had ever been requested. It was as if humanity had simply stopped caring about the Concord entirely. Far away, in a region of space that appeared on no Concord map, Admiral Dowan Park stood in darkness. The only light came from the holographic display before him. Thousands of red dots covered the galaxy, each one representing a human asset in position. Ships, agents, weapons, all waiting for his command. Park was 60 years old. His hair was gray, and his face carried the weight of decades of preparation. He had been chosen for this role when he was just a young officer. His entire life had been building toward this moment. Captain Yuna Kong stood beside him. She commanded the stealth carrier Silent Vengeance, one of 300 ships in humanity's hidden fleet. She was 35, brilliant, and utterly ruthless when necessary. "The vote is complete," she said, reading the intercepted transmission. "They have approved the Calling. They plan to begin in 1 year." Park nodded slowly. "They think they have time. Do they?" No. Park touched a control, and the display changed. New data appeared, showing the positions of Concord military forces across the galaxy. Every ship, every base, every supply line. Humanity had been watching for 50 years. They knew everything. "They forgot we were listening," Park said quietly. In another part of the hidden station, Lieutenant Hyan Beak worked at his console. He was the head of humanity's intelligence network, a web of spies and informants that stretched across every Concord species. For decades, humans had been infiltrating alien societies. They worked as servants, as traders, as minor officials. They watched. They listened. They reported. Beak pulled up the file on the culling. Humanity had known about this plan for 20 years. They had known about every secret meeting, every private discussion, every vote that led to this day. The Concord thought they were acting in secret. They were wrong. Deep in the station's archives, there was a document that few had ever seen. It was a formal declaration of war, written 50 years ago by Dr. Hannah Lim. Humanity's last ambassador to the Concord. Lim had stood before the assembly half a century ago. She had asked for peace. She had asked for equality. She had asked for nothing more than a chance to grow alongside the elder species. They had laughed at her. They had called humans primitive. They had told her that her species would be contained forever. Lim had not argued. She had not begged. She had simply transmitted the declaration to every species in the Concord and walked away. The document was filed in their archives, categorized as primitive posturing, and forgotten. But humanity had not forgotten. The declaration was simple. It stated that humanity considered the containment an act of war. It stated that humanity would respond at a time of their choosing. It stated that when the response came, it would be complete and total. The final line read, "We will not come for your worlds first. We will take everything else." Admiral Park activated Protocol Omega. Across the galaxy, human agents received a single coded message. After 50 years of waiting, the time had come. The next morning, a Concord scout ship arrived at the human border colony of New Bizen. They expected to find 6 million humans living in cities and farms. They expected to begin surveillance for the coming plague attacks. Instead, they found nothing. The cities were empty. The farms were abandoned. Every building stood intact, but not a single human remained. 6 million people had vanished without leaving a trace. No ships were detected leaving the system. No distress signals had been sent. It was as if the entire population had simply disappeared. The scout ship tried to send a report to Concord Command. Their communication system failed. They tried again. Nothing. They were alone in a system full of ghosts. Back in the Great Hall, Ambassador Keth stared at the empty report on his screen. Something was very wrong. The humans were not fighting back. They were not protesting. They were not doing any of the things that desperate species did when facing extinction. They were doing something far worse. They were preparing. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, Admiral Doan Park allowed himself a small smile. The Concord had planned humanity's death for 2 centuries. They had voted for genocide without a second thought. They believed they were the predators and humans were the prey. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The war had not just begun. It had begun 50 years ago, and humanity had already won. The galaxy just did not know it yet. Warlord Dren stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Around him, 3,000 warships waited in formation. This was the largest fleet the Concord had assembled in 500 years. It was enough to burn 100 worlds. "Status report," Dren commanded. "All ships ready, Warlord? We will arrive at the human border in 6 hours." Dren nodded with satisfaction. The humans had been quiet for too long. Their colonies were emptying. Their communications had gone dark. Some in the Concord were worried, but Dren saw only opportunity. Scared prey was easy prey. He looked at the star map on his display. The human systems were marked in blue. So small, so weak. In a few days, the culling would begin, and his name would be remembered forever as the one who ended the human threat. His communication officer suddenly stood up. "Warlord, we have lost contact with Outpost 7. Dren frowned. Technical failure? Unknown, sir. I am trying to re-establish connection. The officer worked at his console for several minutes. I cannot reach them. I am also unable to contact outposts 4, 9, and 12. A cold feeling spread through Dren's chest. 4 outposts going dark at the same time was not technical failure. Contact Concord Command. I cannot, sir. All long-range communication channels are down. The bridge fell silent. 3,000 warships, the pride of the Concord military, were suddenly alone. No support. No orders. No idea what was happening in the rest of the galaxy that far away. Lieutenant Beak watched the chaos unfold on his screens. His intelligence station was hidden inside an asteroid in unclaimed space. From here, he controlled the largest spy network in galactic history. Phase 1 complete, he said into his communicator. Concord communication network is down. Proceeding to Phase 2. For 50 years, human agents had been placing small devices throughout the galaxy. They looked like ordinary equipment. They were installed in communication relays, power stations, and military bases. Today, those devices activated on the Concord capital world. The main power grid failed. Billions of citizens were plunged into darkness. On 17 different military stations, navigation computers suddenly filled with corrupt data. Ships could not find their targets. Fleets could not coordinate. Beak allowed himself a moment of pride. His people had worked in the shadows for generations. They had served alien masters, smiled at their insults, and waited. Now, finally, they could act. Warlord Dren made a decision. Without communication, he could not wait for orders. He would continue to the human border and complete his mission. The humans were weak. They could not possibly stand against his fleet. All ships, proceed to target. We will show these primitives the power of the Concord. His fleet jumped to faster than light travel. The stars blurred and stretched around them. In moments, they would arrive at the human border colony of New Bison and begin the end of humanity. They emerged from the jump into hell. The space around New Bison was filled with debris. But it was not human debris. It was Concord debris. The wreckage of the advance fleet floated in pieces across thousands of kilometers. 300 ships had been sent ahead to prepare for Dren's arrival. None of them remained intact. What? What happened here? Dren whispered. Before anyone could answer, his sensors screamed with warnings. Ships were decloaking all around his fleet. Human ships. Hundreds of them, appearing from behind asteroids, emerging from the shadows of moons, rising from the debris fields where they had been hiding. Captain Unicong sat on the bridge of the Silent Vengeance. Her stealth carrier was the lead ship of the human ambush force. For 6 months, her fleet had been waiting in this system, hidden and patient. All ships begin attack pattern Omega, she said calmly. Disable their engines first. We want prisoners. The human ships moved with perfect coordination. They had trained for this battle for decades. Every pilot knew their role. Every gunner knew their target. They struck at the Concord fleet like wolves attacking a herd. Dren tried to fight back. His ships were powerful, their weapons deadly. But they were confused and scattered. Their communication systems were still failing. They could not coordinate their defense. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, Dren's flagship was adrift in space. His engines were destroyed. His weapons were offline. Around him, the remains of his fleet floated in silence. Human boarding parties cut through the hull of the Eternal Dominion. They moved through the corridors with precision, stunning crew members instead of killing them. Within an hour, they reached the bridge. Dren stood alone among his fallen officers. He held a weapon in his hand, ready to fight to the death. But when the humans entered, they did not fire. They simply surrounded him and waited. A figure walked through the human soldiers. Admiral Doan Park entered the bridge and looked at Dren with cold eyes. "Warlord Dren," Park said, "your fleet is destroyed. Your empire is falling. And you still do not understand what is happening." Dren raised his weapon. "I will not surrender to primitives." Park did not move. "Before you die for nothing, let me show you something." He pulled a data chip from his pocket and activated it. A holographic document appeared in the air between them. Dren's eyes went wide. It was written in the formal language of galactic law. It was addressed to every species in the Concord. It was dated 50 years ago. "This is our declaration of war," Park said. "We transmitted it to your entire civilization. It is stored in your own archives. Category 7, File 9423. Primitive posturing." Dren's weapon lowered slightly. You declared war? 50 years ago. Your leaders received it. They read it. They laughed at it. They filed it away and forgot about it." Park stepped closer. "But we did not forget. We spent 50 years preparing. We built fleets in secret. We placed agents in your governments. We mapped every weakness in your civilization. And when you voted to murder our children, we were ready." Dren dropped his weapon. The sound echoed through the silent bridge. "This is not possible. You are primitives. You cannot defeat us." Park smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You keep using that word. I do not think you understand what it means. We are not primitives, Warlord. We are patient. We are angry. And we have been waiting for this day since before you knew we existed." On the Concord capital world, Scholar Mivra worked frantically in the central archives. She had heard rumors of a human document, something filed decades ago and never read. She had to find it. Her search led her through mountains of data. Finally, she found it. Category 7, File 9423. A declaration of war from humanity, dated 50 years ago. She read it with growing horror. The humans had warned them. They had said exactly what they would do. They had promised to take everything from the Concord before coming for their worlds. The final line made her blood run cold. "We will not come for your worlds first. We will take everything else." Mivra looked at the reports coming in from across the galaxy. Communication networks down. Military fleets destroyed. Outposts gone silent. The humans were not taking worlds. They were taking everything else. They were taking the ability to fight back. She ran to the High Arbiter's chamber, the document clutched in her hands. The galaxy had to know. They had to understand what was happening. The war was not beginning. It was almost over. And humanity had planned every single moment of it. Scholar Mivra burst into the High Arbiter's chamber. Valen sat on his throne, surrounded by panicked advisors. Reports of disaster came from every corner of the galaxy. His empire was crumbling, and no one understood why. "High Arbiter," Mivra gasped. "I found it. I know what is happening." Valen turned his ancient eyes toward her. "Speak." She held up the data chip. 50 years ago, the humans sent us a declaration of war. We ignored it. We filed it as primitive posturing. But they were not posturing. They were warning us. And they have spent every day since then preparing to destroy us." The chamber fell silent. Valen took the chip and read the document. His face grew pale as understanding dawned. "This is impossible," he whispered. "They are short-lived. They could not plan for 50 years. They did not need to live that long," Mivra said. "They passed the plan from generation to generation. Parents taught children. Teachers taught students. They built an entire civilization around one purpose, defeating us." Valen looked at the reports from his military. Fleets destroyed. bases captured, communication networks in ruins. In just 1 week, humanity had dismantled everything the Concorde had built over thousands of years. How? He asked. How did they do this without us knowing? Miva had spent the last 3 days researching. She had found the answer, and it terrified her. 50 years ago, Dr. Hannah Lim had stood in the Great Hall. She was the human ambassador, a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She had come to ask for peace. She had come to ask for equality. She had come to ask for a chance. The Concorde had laughed at her. Me VR pulled up the recording of that day. The chamber watched as Hannah Lim spoke her final words to the assembly. "You have made your choice," Lim said in the recording. Her voice was calm, without anger or fear. "We asked for peace. You gave us containment. We asked for friendship. You gave us contempt. We asked for a future. You gave us chains." The delegates in the recording laughed. One of them called her a performing animal. Lim did not react. She simply continued, "We will not beg. We will not threaten. We will simply tell you the truth. From this moment forward, we are at war. Not the war you understand, with fleets and battles. A different kind of war. A patient war. A quiet war. And when you finally understand what we have done, it will already be over." She transmitted the declaration and walked out. The assembly laughed again and returned to their normal business. Within a week, the document was filed and forgotten, but humanity remembered. General Tao Xin sat in the command center of the human ground forces. He was 70 years old now, his body tired, but his mind still sharp. He had been one of the first children raised under the new doctrine. His entire life had been preparation for this war. He remembered his childhood on a hidden colony world. Every day, the teachers told them stories. Stories about the Concorde's cruelty. Stories about the containment. Stories about the friends and family who would never see the stars, because the elder races had decided humanity was too dangerous to be free. The children learned to fight before they learned to read. They studied alien languages. They memorized the weaknesses of every Concorde species. They were taught patience above all else. "The enemy expects rage," his teacher had told him. "They expect us to attack blindly, to waste our strength against their walls. We will not give them rage. We will give them silence. We will give them time. We will give them a generation of children who know nothing but how to defeat them." Xin had believed. They all had. And now, 50 years later, they were proving their teachers right. Across the galaxy, human agents revealed themselves. Servants who had worked in alien homes for decades suddenly transmitted military secrets. Traders who had built relationships over years activated hidden weapons. Minor officials who had filed paperwork for generations opened doors that should have stayed closed. The Concorde security had been designed to stop external threats. They never imagined that the threat was already inside, waiting patiently for the signal. On 17 Concorde worlds, human ground forces appeared. They did not come to conquer. They came to liberate. For thousands of years, the Concorde had enslaved lesser species. Races that had failed to develop fast enough were put to work as laborers, servants, and worse. The who? Mans found them in chains on every world. They broke those chains. "You are free," General Xin told the first group of freed slaves on a world called Kairos Prime. "The Concorde no longer controls you. Join us or go your own way. The choice is yours." Many chose to join. They had suffered under the Concorde for centuries. They had prayed for someone to save them. They had never imagined that salvation would come from the species the Concorde called primitive. High, Arbiter Valen called an emergency summit. Half of the delegates could not attend. Their transport networks had collapsed. Their communication systems were still failing. Those who arrived brought only bad news. The humans are not conquering worlds, one delegate reported. They are freeing slaves. They are exposing our secrets. They are turning our own people against us. Then destroy them. Vaulat shouted. Send everything we have. We cannot, the military advisor said quietly. Our fleets are scattered. Our supply lines are cut. We do not even know where the human homeworld is anymore. Their colonies were empty when we arrived. They are ghosts, High Arbiter. Ghosts that we cannot find or fight. Vaulat slumped in his throne. For the first time in his 10,000 years, he felt truly afraid. The humans had not just attacked the Concord. They had hollowed it out from the inside. Every weakness the Concord had tried to hide was now exposed. Every crime they had committed was now being broadcast across the galaxy. Admiral Da-Hoon Park appeared on every screen in the chamber. His face was calm, his eyes cold. The most powerful beings in the galaxy were forced to watch and speak. For 200 years, you called us primitive, Park said. You locked us in cages and told us we should be grateful. You planned our extinction and laughed about it in your great halls. You believed you were gods and we were insects. He paused, letting his words sink in. You were wrong. We are not insects. We are not primitives. We are humanity. We remember every insult. We remember every friend lost to your containment. We remember every child who died because you decided we did not deserve to live. Park leaned forward, his image filling the screens. You called us primitive. You planned our extinction. You forgot one thing. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow echoed through the chamber. We remember everything. And now you will too. The screens went dark. The chamber sat in stunned silence. Vaulat finally understood. The humans had not attacked out of rage or fear. They had planned this for 50 years. Every action, every victory, every freed slave was part of a design that began before most of his advisors were born. Concord had thought they were. Dealing with angry animals, they were dealing with patient. Hunter's dot, and the hunt was almost over. The sky above the Concord capital world turned dark with ships. They emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, thousands of them, blocking out the stars. The human fleet had arrived. For 50 years, these ships had been built in secret. Hidden shipyards and systems that appeared on no map had worked day and night. Workers who would never see the final battle had welded hulls and installed weapons, knowing that their children or grandchildren would use them. Captain Unicong stood on the bridge of the Silent Vengeance, looking at the planet below. This world had been the heart of the Concord for 10,000 years. Its leaders had decided the fate of countless species. They had voted for genocide without a second thought. Now they would face judgment. All ships in position, her tactical officer reported. Awaiting your orders, Captain. Kong studied the defensive fleet scrambling to protect the planet. It was less than half the size of the human armada. The Concord had spread their forces across the galaxy, never imagining that their capital could be threatened. Another mistake in a long list of mistakes. Target their shipyards first, Kong ordered. Disable, do not destroy. We want to capture their production facilities intact. The battle began. Human ships moved with precision that shocked the Concord defenders. Every maneuver was practiced. Every attack was calculated. They did not waste shots. They did not make mistakes. The Concord ships fought desperately. Their weapons were powerful, their crews experienced. But they were fighting against an enemy that had studied them for 50 years. The humans knew their tactics, their weaknesses, their blind spots. Every advantage the Concord thought they had was already countered within hours. the orbital defenses fell. Human boarding parties secured the shipyards. Engineers immediately began assessing the captured facilities, planning how to use them for the next phase of the war. On the surface, General Taiho Shin led the ground invasion. His soldiers dropped from the sky in armored pods, landing in strategic locations across the capital city. They did not fire on civilians. They did not destroy buildings. They moved with purpose toward specific targets. "Secure the broadcast center," Shin ordered. "We need to show the galaxy what we found." His troops fought through Concord security forces. These were not the elite soldiers of the military. Those had been destroyed with the fleets. These were guards and police, brave but outmatched. Many surrendered when they saw the size of the human force. Those who fought were subdued quickly. Within 6 hours, the human forces controlled the capital. General Shin stood in the central broadcast chamber, surrounded by his soldiers and a team of technicians. "Are we ready?" he asked. "Yes, General. We can broadcast to every system in the galaxy." "Do it." The broadcast began. On every world, every station, every ship with a working receiver, the transmission appeared. It showed documents, video recordings, audio files, evidence that the Concorde had tried to hide for centuries. The galaxy watched as the truth was revealed. They saw the plans for the culling. They saw Concorde leaders laughing about murdering billions of humans. They saw documents describing engineered plagues designed to target human genetics specifically. They saw Warlord Dren explaining how he would destroy human children in their beds. But that was not all. They saw the records of species enslaved by the Concorde. They saw the torture facilities where prisoners were taken. They saw the experiments conducted on lesser races that the Concorde considered too primitive to deserve rights. Across the galaxy, Concorde citizens watched in horror. They had believed their leaders were wise and just. They had believed the containment of humanity was necessary for safety. They had believed the lies. Now they saw the truth. Ambassador Keth sat in his quarters, watching the broadcast with tears in his eyes. He was a minor diplomat from a minor species. He had served the Concorde faithfully for 300 years. He had believed in the system. He had been a fool. When the broadcast ended, he made a decision. He contacted the human forces and offered to help. He was not the only one. Across the galaxy, Concorde officials began surrendering. Military officers refused to follow orders. Citizens demanded answers from their leaders. The Concorde was not just losing a military war. It was losing the hearts of its own people. High Arbiter Valen hid in his palace, surrounded by the last of his guards. The building was ancient, built before his species had reached the stars. It had survived 10,000 years of history. Now it was surrounded by human soldiers. Admiral Dawn Park walked through the front gates alone. The guards raised their weapons, but did not fire. Something in his eyes told them it would be pointless. He walked through empty halls, past priceless artifacts and ancient artwork. He climbed stairs that emperors had climbed before him. He found Valen sitting on his throne, looking small and afraid. "Admiral Park," Valen said. His voice was weak. "You have won. What more do you want? Are you here to kill me?" Park stopped at the base of the throne. "No. Then what? Torture? Humiliation? What is your wrath going to demand?" Park was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm. 50 years ago, your Concorde planned to murder my species. You voted for genocide. You laughed about it. You never considered that we might fight back because you believed we were beneath you. He climbed the steps toward the throne. Valen pressed back in fear. "I spent my entire life preparing for this moment. I watched friends die in secret. I buried agents who were discovered and executed. I held children who would never know peace because of what your Concord did to us. He stood before Valen now, close enough to touch him. I could kill you. I could burn this world. I could do to your species what you planned to do to mine. Valen closed his eyes, waiting for death, but I will not. The High Arbiter's eyes opened in confusion. Because we are not you, Park said. We do not murder sleeping children in their beds. We do not engineer plagues for those who inconvenience us. We do not laugh about genocide in great halls. We are humanity. We fight. We win. And then we build something better. He handed Valen a document. This is a treaty. Its terms are simple. The Concord is dissolved. A new organization will take its place, one where all species are equal. The slaves you kept will be freed. The crimes you committed will be judged. Your species will not be destroyed, but your empire will end. Valen looked at the document with trembling hands. And if I refuse? Then your civilization will become a warning to others. A story that parents tell children about what happens when power is used without wisdom. Park's eyes were cold. I am offering you a chance to survive. I suggest you take it. Valen read the treaty. His hands shook as he reached for a pen. He signed. The war was over. Humanity had won, but their victory was not destruction. It was transformation. They had not burned the galaxy. They had changed it, and that was the true measure of their wrath. 1 year had passed since the war ended. The Galactic Concord was gone. In its place stood the Galactic Commonwealth, a union built on principles that the old order had never understood. Equality, justice, memory. Every species had a voice. Every crime would be answered for. Every lesson would be remembered. Admiral Doan Park stood in a garden on Earth. The planet was free now, no longer contained by treaties written by tyrants. Ships came and went from orbit, carrying traders and diplomats from 100 worlds. Humanity had finally taken its place among the stars, but Park was not watching the ships. He was watching his tomatoes grow. When the war ended, the new Commonwealth had offered him leadership. He refused. He was tired. He had spent his entire life preparing for a war that was now over. He wanted rest. Admiral, a voice called from the garden gate. You have a visitor. Park did not turn around. I am retired. Tell them to find someone else. She says she knows you. Dr. Hannah Lim. Park's hands stopped moving. He had not seen Hannah in 10 years. She had been the one who started all of this. Her declaration of war. Her warning to the Concord. Her patience that inspired generations. He turned around. Hannah stood at the gate, small and old. She was nearly 90 now, her hair white and her face lined with age. But her eyes were still sharp. Admiral, she said. Doctor, he replied. I thought you were giving speeches at the Commonwealth Assembly. I was. Now I am here. She walked slowly into the garden and sat on a bench. They want me to speak at the anniversary celebration. 1 year since the war ended. Park sat beside her. Will you? I have not decided yet. She looked at the sky, watching a ship climb toward orbit. I have been thinking about what we did. What we built. What it cost. We won. Yes, we won. She was quiet for a moment. But I keep thinking about the children. The ones who were raised knowing nothing but preparation for war. The ones who never had a normal life because we needed soldiers. Park understood. He had been one of those children. So had General Shin. So had Captain Kong. An entire generation raised for a single purpose. We did what we had to do, he said. I know. I just wonder if there was another way. She looked at him. Do you ever regret it? Park thought about the question carefully. He thought about the friends he had lost, the agents who died in silence, the families torn apart by the need for secrecy, the children who grew up knowing they might die for a war that would not start until they were old. No, he finally said. The Concord gave us no choice. They planned our extinction. They laughed about murdering our children. If we had done nothing, our species would be dead now. I regret the cost. I do not regret the choice. Hana nodded slowly. That is why I wanted to talk to you. I needed to hear someone say it. Far across the galaxy, Captain Yuna Kong commanded the Commonwealth Peacekeeping Fleet. Her ships patrolled the space between stars, not to dominate, but to protect. Pirates and slavers who had thrived under the Concord found no safety now. The weak species that had been preyed upon finally had defenders. Kong stood on the bridge of the Silent Vengeance, reading reports from across her patrol zone. A human ship had rescued survivors from a damaged alien freighter. A joint human-alien crew had stopped a smuggling operation. Two species that had been enemies for centuries were meeting for peace talks. The galaxy was changing. Slowly, painfully, but it was changing. Her communication officer approached. Captain, you have a message from Earth. Ambassador Keth is visiting and requests to speak with you. Kong smiled. Keth had become an important figure in the new Commonwealth. The former Concord diplomat had testified against his own leaders, helping to expose their crimes. Now he worked to rebuild trust between species. Tell him I am honored and will speak with him when I return to port. On the former Concord capital world, General Taiho Shin stood before the first class of the Integrated Military Academy. Human and alien cadets stood together, wearing the same uniforms, following the same training. Many of the alien cadets were children of former enemies. Their parents had fought against humanity in the war. Now their children trained beside human soldiers, learning to fight together instead of against each other. You are the future, Shin told them. The old divisions are gone. The old hatreds must be left behind. You will serve together, bleed together, and if necessary, die together. Not for one species, but for all of them. A young alien cadet raised her hand. General, my father died fighting against humans. How am I supposed to forget that? Shin nodded. You are not supposed to forget. You are supposed to remember. Remember the cost of the old ways. Remember what hatred built and what it destroyed. Then build something better. The cadet lowered her hand, thinking. The humans did not forget what the Concord did to them, Shin continued. They remembered every insult, every death, every injustice. But they did not use that memory for revenge. They used it for change. That is what I am asking you to do. Remember everything. Then choose to be better than the past. On Earth, Dr. Hannah Lim finally made her decision. She would speak at the anniversary celebration. She would stand in the same chamber where she had delivered her warning 50 years ago. But this time, the galaxy would listen. She arrived at the Commonwealth Assembly Hall. Thousands of delegates from hundreds of species filled the chamber. Humans sat beside aliens. Former slaves sat beside former masters. The galaxy had gathered to remember what had happened and to look toward what would come. Hana walked to the platform. Her body was old and tired, but her voice was still strong. 50 years ago, I stood in a room much like this one, she began. I asked for peace. I asked for equality. I asked for nothing more than a chance for my species to grow alongside yours. You laughed at me. You called us primitive. You planned our extinction. The chamber was silent. So we went to war. Not a war of rage. Not a war of destruction. A patient war. A quiet war. A war that lasted 50 years and ended with this moment. She looked across the assembled delegates. You asked us once what we wanted. We wanted peace. You denied us. We wanted equality. You denied us. We wanted survival. You denied us. So we took them all. Not through your extinction, but through your transformation. She paused, letting her words sink in. This is humanity's wrath. Not the destruction of our enemies, but the creation of a galaxy where such enemies can never rise again. We did not burn your worlds. We did not murder your children. We did not do to you what you planned to do to us, because that would have made us the monsters you believed we were. She smiled, and for a moment, she looked young again. We are not monsters. We are humanity. We remember. We survive. And we build. This Commonwealth is our wrath made real. A galaxy of equals. A galaxy of justice. A galaxy where no species will ever be contained or controlled, or marked for death, because others fear their potential. She looked at the humans in the crowd. To my people, I say this. Remember what we suffered. Remember what we built. Remember the children who were raised for war and never knew peace. They paid the price for this moment. Honor their sacrifice by making it worth something. She looked at the aliens in the crowd. To the others, I say this. You have been given a second chance. Not because you deserved it, but because we chose to give it. Use it well. Build something worthy of the pain that came before. She stepped back from the platform. The chamber rose to its feet. Not in fear. Not in submission. In respect not far away, on Earth, Admiral Park watched the speech on a small screen in his garden. Hannah had found the right words. She always did. He turned off the screen and returned to his tomatoes. The galaxy could take care of itself now. He had done his part. Above him, the stars shone bright. Ships from 100 worlds crossed the sky. Children played in the streets, never knowing the darkness their parents had prepared for. The galaxy had feared humanity's wrath. They never understood that humanity's true wrath was hope. Hope fierce enough to survive hatred. Patient enough to outlast tyranny. Merciful enough to offer a second chance. The stars that had once been silent with fear now hummed with the voices of 100 species. United at last. The war was over. The future had begun.